Commissioner Jasmine Beach Ferrara will present this item. There's not any vote to be taken on this. This is simply for discussion purposes. And I want to acknowledge that we have Sheriff Quentin Miller with us here this evening. So, Sheriff, thank you for being with us and for all your great work of you and the folks on your team. Commissioner?
Sure. This is sort of to provide some background and context. Periodically, there's a bill under consideration at the North Carolina General Assembly that has particular implications in Buncombe County for one reason or another, and HB 370 is one such bill. So this will be just a discussion to provide a bit of background and context, and to share an update about a letter that 4 members of Commission, myself, Chairman Newman, Commissioners Whitesides and Edwards, sent to Governor Cooper as well as leadership at the General Assembly expressing opposition to HB 370. This story begins in some ways back in February of this year when the Buncombe County Sheriff's Office announced a new policy that the office would no longer honor ICE detainers due to concerns that those detainers violate due process and were requiring people be held beyond the length of stay required by a court order. And additionally, due to concerns about the ways in which a policy of complying with ICE detainers chilled the relationship between immigrants in Buncombe County and law enforcement and created barriers to people feeling that they could safely call law enforcement in times of crisis and need. So that local policy was set in place under the direction of Sheriff Quentin Miller. Buncombe County was one of 7 counties, the 7 largest counties in the state of North Carolina, to put such policies in place at the local level under the authority of the local sheriff's office. The situation we find ourselves in now is that there is a bill titled HB 370 that was introduced at the state legislature in a retaliatory manner to basically undermine the local policies that have been set in these 7 counties and to mandate that sheriffs in all North Carolina counties comply with ICE detainers. I oppose this law and put an invitation on the table to anyone in commission to join me in sending letters because it is actively under deliberation in Raleigh right now. It has not yet passed into law. The status of the bill is it passed both chambers, but is currently sitting in the Rules Committee of the House because the Senate version that passed was slightly amended. If it is to pass through this committee and find its way to the governor's desk, there's a pledged veto of it, which would bounce it back to the legislature. I want to speak briefly about why some of the reasons that I oppose HB 370, and they start and end with the primary reason that I'm sitting here at all, which is to represent people who live in Buncombe County and to represent and serve the interests of people who live in Buncombe County. And any time members of our community are being targeted by a law, I think it's important to speak up about that. And I have grave concerns that HB 370 is unconstitutional, that it targets the immigrant communities here in Buncombe County and across North Carolina, and that it also undermines the authority of duly elected sheriffs to do their jobs and to set policies that protect and maintain the public safety of the communities they're elected to serve. So that's a bit of context, a bit of my perspective as an individual commissioner. Anyone who's interested can find copies of those letters linked to through our agenda.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Are there any other members of the commission who wish to speak on this item? All right. If not, we're going to move on to the next one.
So I would like to make a couple of comments. All right, let me turn it on. I would like to make a couple of comments. One is that which I was glad and supported that. I think, Chairman, it was when you become chair that it wasn't a written policy, but we did not. A lot of people were coming to us wanting us to do resolutions directed towards the state or directed towards federal issues, and that we had decided that we were not going to do that. And I know that this falls short of a resolution. However, the conversation is similar. The conversation allows us to bring a state or national vote or law and to take our personal position on that. When I was sworn in as a commissioner, I was sworn in to uphold the Constitution of the United States, and I swore to oppose the Constitution of North Carolina. And that includes everybody. That includes all the people that live in Buncombe County, and I intend to do that. I do appreciate where this conversation is coming from. Yet, I think it's as similar to doing a resolution, and so I think there's a better way for us to handle this. Because when you do a letter, even though you have 2 or 3 people sign it, the letterhead that we have has everybody, and so it appears to be a board decision. And I support people can't view our hearts, but this entire board reaches out to our Hispanic friends, our Hispanic community, and loves them and supports them dearly, and that's not going to change. This discussion is not going to change any of that with us individually. However, I think that we have to be really careful when we're doing a letter that has the entire board and we have 1 or 2. I don't even think I can do a letter by myself that has all the board represented at the top. I think we have to be careful of that. So, and that's the reason I chose not to sign the document. I don't want to get into the partisan ship or whether people agree or disagree with the state of North Carolina. The state of North Carolina is I get them confused sometimes. Dillon rule?
No, not exactly.
Are we Dillon rule or home rule?
No. We're neither.
Well, no, we're one or the other. We don't want to debate. We don't want to debate that. But technically, we're a Dillon rule state, which means that the state makes the rules, and so we elect the state legislatures, and we have to, whether we agree with them or not, as an elected official personally. This has nothing to do with sheriff. It has to do with me. It is my obligation to support that. But I do support where you guys are coming from, why you feel the way you feel. I understand that, and I respect your right to be able to have that discussion. But when I made that oath, it was to uphold the laws of the state of North Carolina. But anyhow, okay. I'm talking a little much. But I guess that's why we wanted to have the conversation. But one of the things I want to make sure of tonight is that this is not one of those conversations where this board is divided and creates some sort of divide between the board, because I know where each board member stands in their heart. And I just want to make sure that that's very clear tonight, and that's not the purpose of the conversation, and that's what resolutions tend to do, so we have to be very careful with that. So I'll hush for the evening. Thank you.
All right, anyone else to speak on this item?
Yeah, I want to follow up. Done some background research, and I got a little thing here, and I can make it where everyone can have it, but I'd like to read it. After each of us was elected to this board, the first thing we did was raise our hand and take an oath of office between God and the good people of Buncombe County. When we said those words, we were promising to do 2 things: uphold the law of both the United States and the state of North Carolina, and to perform the duties that comes with being a county commissioner. Where I come from, keeping your word means everything. And when I took that oath, I was giving my word not to those who voted for me, but everyone in Buncombe County who is honored to serve. I made them that promise. We all did. Now I understand that good people, including my colleagues here, can have an honest disagreement about how to handle things, especially on hot topic issues like illegal immigration. And as far as the specific concerns raised by my colleagues of the majority regarding House Bill 370, they may even have some valid points, but under our system, there is a right way to do things. It is often said that we are a nation of law. What that means is, to me, is that as citizens, We don't get to choose which law we will follow and which law we will break. And as elected representatives of the people, we're required to govern according to the Constitution as set by law. Now, we as a board are temporary elected officials of the seat we hold on behalf of the citizens of Buncombe County. And while I appreciate my colleagues' social justice activism as a way to change things, I don't believe we should allow that activism to get in the way and promise that we made to the citizens we were sent, who sent us here. I'm a simple guy, and this is a simple matter for me. I made a promise, and I intend to keep it.
Can I speak?
Yes, sir.
One is, I don't think this is a law yet, right?
Correct.
And one of the things, and I agree with where my colleagues are coming from, but you know, in America, we do have the right to express our opinion. And that's what a democracy is about, folks. And that's what we're doing here. And I don't think that's wrong. And the people who elected me, they know what I stand for and what I've stood for all my life. And I'm not going to change now. And I feel that I'm representing the people of my district and Buncombe County. And when our sheriff was elected, 62% of the vote that he got in the election. And he told the people that what he was going to do. And not to mention, I don't think we've gone along with ICE before. This is not something that just started in Buncombe County. I don't think the previous sheriff, signed that. But as far as the commission, sure, I'm not. We're going to disagree, and I agree. But I think we are exercising our fiduciary responsibility in speaking up, because a lot of the people in my district are supporting it, and, I hear from them about it. And, I don't see anything wrong with it, and I'd be willing to sign the letter in the future if we have something that I don't think is right. And it really concerns me now, not only as a commissioner, but as a citizen of America. Where is our moral compass, folks? We've gotten to the point that we don't give a darn anymore about people. I can remember at one time we were, policing the world for people's human rights. Now we don't give a darn about citizens' rights, let alone anybody else. But we're losing track of our moral compass. And, when I hear us talk about what religious community we are in America, folks, we don't practice what we preach. And it's obvious to me, and especially in churches, and I'm very critical of this, and I've always been. Still, the most segregated hour in the week is 11 o'clock Sunday morning. But I still think what we did is right, and I will do it again, if it's a law that I see that I don't think is fair. And when you start arresting people or picking them up without due process, even if they're not citizens, they're in the United States of America, and we follow laws here, and we should do that. Darn, this reminds me of the Jim Crow period that I came up with when I was a kid. Heaven forbid we go back there.
I'd like to follow up and I'm glad we're having this discussion, and I think it raises some important issues about what is the responsibility of a county commission when you have a moment where local policy and state law seem to be on a collision course. It's long been said that North Carolina is a Dillon's law state, but there's actually diverging legal opinions on that and diverging jurisprudence on that. So I think we ought not rest necessarily on that analysis in a simple way in every instance. But this is a particularly important one, and I think it's important for people in Buncombe County to know what's happening. Federal law is actually neutral on this topic and says it is at the discretion of sheriffs about whether to comply with ICE detainers. So they point to the local authority on this. Our sheriff's office is tasked with a very difficult legal, moral, fiduciary responsibility of maintaining the detention center, and has made the decision that holding people without a court order not only violates due process, but is not in the community's interest or public safety's interest. To me, that's exactly the kind of moment when it's appropriate for a county commission to add our voice to the chorus of elected officials across the state who are wrestling with this topic and trying to figure out the direction that makes the most sense. And this is an instance where I feel like respecting the will of our community, which clearly voted in a sheriff who campaigned on exactly issues like this, and who has used his discretion to make this assessment, is critical, as have 6 of the other largest counties in North Carolina that are contending with this issue in the most front lines way. And as has been pointed out, this is not a law. It's a law under debate at the North Carolina General Assembly. So citing to the oath we took to uphold the federal and state constitution actually points us, if anything, to federal law, which is neutral on this topic. So if we're going to cite to our oath in this moment, it would point us to a federal law saying it's at the discretion of the sheriff. And in doubt, I am going to look to the oath to the federal constitution. So there's a lot of ways we can talk about this. I think it's good for us to have these discussions. And there are going to be times when what's happening in Raleigh has direct and immediate implications in particular ways in Buncombe County. And I will always land on the side of us, it being better for us to shine a light on those topics, to discuss them. If there are those among us who feel compelled to act through resolution or letter or public statement, I think that's important. And what I think of first and foremost is people who live in District 1 and other parts of the county who have reached out to me to talk about how policies related to immigration and the way those policies play out in our local community impact themselves every day, their families, their children, their ability to participate fully in the life of our community, whether that means showing up for school or what happens if they have an interaction with the criminal justice system. So a bit more about why I'm landing where I'm landing, but also a bit more I think that's important for us to keep in mind as we have these important discussions about the intersections of local, state, and federal law, policy, process, and procedure.
All right. Okay, all right. All right, if there's no one else on this, then I appreciate everyone's comments on this. I'll just, I will, we don't have a formal policy on adoption of resolutions regarding sort of state and federal issues. We have, I think, sort of just a past practice that we don't adopt resolutions on issues that, unless they are a local bill that's unique to Buncombe County. I think this would definitely be impactful to Buncombe County. I don't know. It's almost kind of a little bit in a gray area. We're one of only a handful of counties that I think would be directly impacted, but it's not in the literal sense a local bill. So I certainly think it's important that we be primarily focused on our county responsibilities, but there are these times when issues come up that have a lot of importance. And so I for that reason, I appreciate folks sharing their perspective on it.
Yeah, I do too. The only thing that, to me, if we're gonna do a letter and somebody wants to do a letter, then they ought to just do a letter. We don't need to do a letter from the entire board. There's just it's not whether we agree or disagree on what Raleigh's going to do or not going to do. It's just, to me, just we just have to be very careful in like what I would choose to do a letter on.
Okay.
But I think everybody spoke, pretty.
And my hope would be that, my hope would be that we continue the practice of not adopting resolutions, because I think that would invite just spending too much time on this. But a letter is a nice way where the folks who want to express their views can do so without, and other folks who want to remain silent on it, or maybe write a letter saying, I'm on the other side of this issue. Everyone can just kind of can use their own. Sure. And then Sheriff Miller, if you'd like to. We'd be happy to hear from you as well.
Oh, it's just
standing up on the
Yes, sir.
So first, let me thank you guys for even considering this conversation, even considering the letter. But let me be absolutely clear that everyone must look at a couple things for me tonight. First of all, as it's been stated, the previous sheriff basically did not support the 287G. And I've come out and I said that I would not support the detainer part of that. I just want to be clear that for me this is even more, because this hasn't become an issue until the 7 minority sheriffs in the state of North Carolina were elected. then there became this issue that some would lead you to believe that we are not following the Constitution, we're not following our oath, and if that was the case, why do we need a new law? I'm telling you that it's always been the sheriff's discretion to make this decision. We've made our decision, and now, you know, we speak about 62% of people in Buncombe County that elected me. I ran on the campaign I ran on the fact that I would not support 287. I've been very clear about that. I'm not going to back up from what I stated before, because I do support what the people who put me in office, and they knew from the beginning. So as we move forward and we start talking about the 287, I just want to be clear that I'm not, you know, not doing my oath of office. I am doing that. I'm not breaking the Constitution. I am following the Constitution, and if you look at what I've said, is that I will honor the detainer if they give us a valid warrant. So the problem I'm having is that it's not a valid warrant. We're holding people, or we're being asked to hold people after they went through the due process. Once due process happens, they're free to go. And now ICE is asking us to hold them beyond that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Sheriff. Commissioner Fryer?
I forgot what I was going to say.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
Oh, man.
All right, well, again, thank you all for good discussion. All right.